Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. So I thought I'd make this video as a follow-up to my previous one, so make sure you watch that one. Furthermore, this is a video to promote my in-depth harmony course for jazz guitarists that you can find on SoundSlice. I'm very confident that this is a unique course and one of the best of its kind, as it involves years of very deep research. What makes it different? Well, I basically teach harmony from a historical and organic perspective. There's a lot of information that is rarely taught even in formal schools because a lot of teachers have not done the very deep research that I have done. And hopefully this free video will convince you about that. So check it out. The link is in the description box. Those of you who follow my channel know that my videos tend to be very, very detailed and even philosophical rather than, dry and academic. It takes a lot of time to make each video, and I offer these for free. So if you can help out, then hit the like button, make a comment, subscribe, share, and all that. Definitely check out the course if you're interested in this stuff. And if you want to financially support me, you can also buy other courses. Check out something from the DC Music School site, and all the links will be in the description box. All right, let's get started. So I chose to analyze this standard called There Will Never Be Another You. Mainly because it's probably one of the most common jazz standards in jazz communities around the world. It is arguably a step up or two from other standards, such as Blue Bossa or Autumn Leaves. While it isn't the most difficult tune out there, it has a number of variations in certain parts that some students may have questions about. So I figured this is a great universal jazz tune to study. Of course, keep in mind that a lot of the information that I share for this tune can and should be applied to other tunes when you encounter similar situations. I'll even be referencing other songs so you can see how many songs share similarities. And as many of you know, I like to talk about history as well. So this is a song that is commonly played in E-flat among instrumentalists. So as a historical note, keys get standardized on certain songs due to a number of factors. There is obviously the popularity of a song, and often if a certain musician made a famous recording in a particular key, over time it influences others to play it in that key. Of course, if you play with singers, you may have to play it in other keys. Basically, there are standards that are not as popular, that don't have standardized keys because while being quote-unquote a jazz standard, they are not as popular or famous artists have recorded them in various keys. And I think this fact is something that's really good to know. So an example of a song that doesn't have a quote-unquote standardized key, in my opinion, would be But Not For Me. I've seen it played in so many keys. But nowadays, with things like iReal Pro and the Real Book, many students will assume that whatever key is written in the book is the quote-unquote standardized key. But really, the key was arbitrarily chosen. So in the jazz standard repertoire, the super famous songs like All the Things You Are, There'll Never Be Another You, Autumn Leaves have their quote-unquote standardized keys. But then even some that are famous have different standardized keys, like Green Dolphin Street or Night and Day. Some played in C, some played in E-flat. There were enough famous instrumentalists playing them in both keys that it got standardized in both ways. Keep in mind that many of these American songbook songs were originally sung as well, and when it comes to singers, students often have to be able to play them in just about any key. Some standards, for whatever reason, become popular among instrumentalists, and those instrumentalists are the ones who usually end up standardizing the keys. So that was just a little bit of historical info about how keys get decided. Coming back to that example of But Not For Me, if enough famous jazz musicians had recorded the song in roughly the same key, it would have been standardized in that key. But that wasn't the case. So coming back to There Will Never Be Another You, I actually investigated the original recording from the movie, which is in the key of B. And I'll talk about that later, but for now, when I check out a song, there are a few things that I like to do. One thing is that I try to understand the skeletal structure of a song. I also try to understand the form and the resolution points. So in my harmony course, there's a concept that I call harmonic direction. And this is one of the most important concepts that good musicians need to know in order to play jazz in a quote-unquote authentic way. Harmonic direction basically means understanding where the chords are going. You may have been told that it's important to play the changes by many teachers. And depending on how one defines playing the changes, it is obviously certainly very important, but it is not the entire picture. What is actually far more important is understanding harmonic direction. And this is something that all the best jazz musicians know. And for many, actually, it's something that they subconsciously know. And we'll be getting into all that as will hopefully help you navigate the improvisation aspect of this tune. So here on the screen, you see how the song looks like on a version that I got from the iReal Pro. There is nothing necessarily wrong with this chart. But again, there is the issue of standardization. Nowadays, these are the changes we are likely to encounter at sessions, with maybe tiny variations here and there. The one important point I always want to make is that songs can be harmonized in so many different ways. When you listen to recordings from a lot of older players, you definitely see this. This to me shows that the artists recording these songs are making certain deliberate and creative decisions, as opposed to being a robot and just reading off charts with very little understanding of the music. Things like the iReal Pro or the Real Book before that, they're just tools, right? And ultimately, actually, there's lots of good things coming out of these tools. However, if the tools are used in the wrong way, there are also bad things as well. And I think one of the worst things that came out of this culture is people are basically treating these songs like some kind of formula and reading the charts like a robot with very little understanding of the music. And hopefully with this video I can sort of start to correct this a little bit. Bill Evans once said, "It bugs me when people try to analyze jazz as an intellectual theorem. It's not, it's feeling." And it seems like an odd statement for someone who made such intricate music, and without specific clarification it may be hard to understand exactly what he meant. But my personal take is that Bill Evans is someone who has done a lot of the creative exploration that many of the older artists have done. And keep in mind that he comes from an older style of jazz, and his deep understanding of this older style from immersion gave him a deep understanding of music and harmony. A lot of his fancy harmonizations come from this understanding of the old style. It's something that a lot of jazz students who admire Bill Evans are often missing. When you check out songs that he played like Stardust or My Foolish Heart, his intricate harmonies come from a very deep understanding of the basic feelings of versions before his. So here now is a chart of a potential basic version, and I'll break everything down for you. First of all, this is a song from 1942. When I study songs, I try to find out when they were written, because it gives us certain subtle clues about songwriting approaches. Different eras have different songwriting trends and tendencies. And the early 1940s was a rather interesting era. There Will Never Be Another You has many features that actually came from the previous era, let's say the 1920s, 1930s, but with little twists here and there. And the one on the iReal Pro that I showed earlier has trends from later eras. So let's get started. Check out the chart. So, E flat to G7. This is a very classic move in a lot of popular music of the early 20th century. And of course, a lot of these progressions come from classical music as well. E flat to G7, in theoretical terms, is what many jazz musicians would call 1 to 3 dominant, or even 3 major. You don't necessarily have to have the flat 7. This is a chord progression found in songs like All of Me, I Wonder Where My Baby Is Tonight, Sunny Side of the Street, and it's even in John Lennon's Imagine. So here is one of the first interesting twists. Instead of G7, many musicians will add a D minor 7 flat 5. And basically, D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 is what we call a 2-5 movement. The deeper meaning behind this is actually that it creates extra voice leading. When you understand the voice leading, you realize they are essentially the same chords. And you'll have to buy my harmony course if you want to know why they are the same. Now, for an extra twist, when this song was originally composed, the composer Harry Warren was creative as well. So coming from 1942, the 1 to 3 dominant sound was so common in the previous era that perhaps he felt it would be a good idea to add a little twist himself. Instead of playing minor 7 flat 5, he uses a full-on minor chord. So in the key of E flat, that would be D minor. So it sounds like this. Da 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 da. This A flat basically becomes A natural. So it's something that quote unquote is not diatonic to the key of E flat, but it just adds this extra special color, if you will. And as an extra historical note, in the 1940s and 1950s, when certain jazz musicians played this tune, they sometimes also played D minor 7. So one such recording is Oscar Peterson with Lester Young. I think it's from 1952. So you see, it's very interesting to look at things from an era before standardization happened. So this 3 dominant chord then leads us to C minor. Again, a very typical move. A brief modulation to the relative minor in theoretical terms. From there, the basic skeleton version would go to E flat 7. So this is a very interesting progression that appears in songs from various eras. In fact, just a few years later, there's a tune called I'll Close My Eyes that has practically the same chord progression as There Will Never Be Another You, at least the first few bars. So I'll Close My Eyes, many people play that in F. Da 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 da, C minor, F7. So it's the same progression as There Will Never Be Another You. Later on, there'll be songs like Sunny or Just the Two of Us that also feature this progression. So C minor going to E flat 7, then to A flat. Let's just stop here for a second and look at the cleverness of the voice leading. If I play C minor as C minor 7, look at E flat, then E flat 7. There's a really efficient voice leading. The bass is going from C to E flat. The B flat can stay the same. The E flat here could stay the same, but let's say it goes down to D flat, and the G stays the same. So it's a very efficient voice leading technique. And if we go further back from the very beginning, check out the voice leading from the beginning, from the first chord, E flat, to G7, to C minor, E flat 7, A flat, we haven't talked about A flat yet, then goes to A flat minor, then back to E flat, then goes to F7, then B flat 7, and then to the E flat again. So there's, when you look at songs, try to understand where things are coming from. A lot of times voice leading plays a very big role in choice of harmonies. And when you add extra chords here and there, passing chords or reharmonizations, it offers different paths for voice leading. Going back to that C minor to E flat 7 sound, check out this voicing of C minor. So we have E flats, the first inversion, E flat, G, C, and E flat again. E flat 7, we just changed one note. So that's very important, the cleverness of voice leading in determining how songs get harmonized. When you look at the iReal Pro, however, it shows C minor going to B flat minor. And just for now, I'm going to go on another tangent. You may notice that I'm very specific with how I call chords. I say specifically C minor and not C minor 7. And when I talked about D minor earlier, I said I didn't necessarily say D minor 7 unless referring to someone playing a D minor 7. And that is one of the things that the iReal Pro or the Real Book has standardized. It has made students and even professional musicians alike assume that when it's minor 7. When it's major 7. Again, this reminds me a lot about Bill Evans' statement. Things are so automated today that many students don't see the deeper picture. There are many other chord qualities besides minor 7 or major 7. People call these jazz chords nowadays, but believe me when I say that triads were very common in jazz in the early days. not just triads, but other voicings as well. And good musicians who had deep understanding of music chose the voicings that fit the moment well. And a lot of this often has to do with voice leading, understanding the direct paths that each note of the chord offers. So B flat minor to E flat 7, resolving to A flat, is another 2-5-1 movement. So as I mentioned before, 2 and 5 are the same chords. Again, if you want to know about this, check out my course to understand the historical reason, as I explained it in detail. Basically, when you see a 5-7 chord, a dominant chord, it's possible to put a 2 chord behind it in many situations. In the original recording from the movie, there is an interesting orchestration thing happening as well. So I'm going to do this in the key of E flat so that it's made simple for all of us. So C minor, going to E flat 7. Let's say E flat 9. In the movie, one of the instruments is doing this kind of voice leading. And the bass does this motion. So C minor to F7, but then the bass goes to E flat. It's again another voicing thing. So if you want to reinterpret this in theoretical terms, it would be like a 2-5 to B flat, except for they do like this voice leading to E flat. And what's interesting about this is this again is the result of voice leading. When you start to explore voice leading, you discover all these quote-unquote accidental chords, passing chords. I'll give you one example. Check out this chord. This is an E minor triad. Okay, so the notes B, G, B, and E. And if I voice lead things to get to some sort of, let's say, A7 chord, I get this A7 chord. C sharp, G, A, E. So what are the common tones? Well, basically these two, G and E here. And to get from E minor, so it's a 2-5, okay? It's a 2-5 in the key of D. From E minor to A7, I want to transfer this note B to a C sharp. And this note B here, to get from E minor to A7, I'd go from the note B to A. And we have this voice leading. But notice that there are 2 holes to fill in between. So from B to C sharp, there's a C natural. And from B natural to A, there's a B flat. So check out this voice leading thing. In between E minor and A7, in this voicing, these 2 voicings, there's a hidden C7 chord. And this is something that people who are into orchestration or composition or jazz arranging, they were into discovering these kinds of things. In my opinion, this is something that good musicians discover when they start to really understand the deeper meanings behind the chords. That is the voice leading. If you want to hear a jazz musician do this special 2-5, you can hear Django do this in his Rome recording of What a Difference a Day Made. Does something like A minor, F to D to G. Keep in mind, Django was musically illiterate, but he was someone who understood music. He understood voice leading. So someone who knew nothing about theory was able to discover these sounds because they had this deep understanding, subconscious understanding of harmony. So I urge you, chord players, not to just think about grips, but to think about each individual note and how you can move from one chord to another. You'll discover all these passing chord possibilities. So one cool thing about C minor going to B flat minor is that you have now this chromatic parallel movement that's possible as well. You can do C minor, B minor to E, C minor, B minor to B flat minor. And this is something that you hear nowadays in a song called Sunny. A lot of people have recorded Sunny this way. Keep in mind though that originally Sunny was A minor to C7 to F. This is a new modern harmonization that a lot of players like to use. So again, regardless of which harmonization you choose to use, it's good to always explore the voice leading possibilities that each harmonization offers. By the way, the original recording of Sunny was in the key of E minor. So it'll be E minor to C7, so G7 to C to B7. Sunny, da, 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 B7. Those are the lyrics. Adding extra chords doesn't necessarily make things better, but it offers new voice leading perspectives. And this is all useful to know as an improviser, whether or not the rhythm section is doing these things. And this is what I call harmonic direction. Here's another historical side note. In Japan, nowadays they have their own fake book written by a Japanese jazz musician. So in Japan, this song is standardized in another way. They have the B flat minor 7, but to get from C minor to B flat minor, they add the F7 chord. One full bar of C minor to one full bar of F7 to B flat minor. So you have 2-5 going to B flat minor. So again, more voice leading possibilities. And hence, in my opinion, the importance of really trying to understand the skeletal structure as much as possible, and it's what we're doing here. Okay, so back to the song. So all that is a 2-5-1 to A flat, B flat minor, E flat 7 to A flat. And from A flat, basically, we want to try to get back to E flat. So this A flat in relation to the key of E flat is a very common chord progression. It's 4-1. And in between, for this song, the composer put an A flat minor. And this is one of the quintessential chord progressions of the early 20th century American pop music. 4-4 minor. And it's all voice leading. From A flat to A flat minor to E flat, you have the notes C, C flat, because it's the minor third of A flat, to B flat. Again, all voice leading. Basically, the 4 minor is in some ways a passing chord to connect 4 back to 1. And you find this chord progression in so many songs. All of Me, Just Friends, I Can't Believe That You're in Love with Me, Georgia on My Mind. So you took the part that once was my heart. Just friends, lovers no more. Da 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 da. What was it? Oh yeah, Georgia on My Mind. The way originally harmonized by Hoagy Carmichael, the composer. Da 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 dee da da. So there, 4 E flat to E flat minor. Really popular chord progression found in so many songs in early American pop music. And here we go on another historical tangent, because what I want to teach you here is not just There Will Never Be Another You, but I want you to understand music and harmony. 4-1 is an ancient chord progression, and you find this in a lot of church music. Later on, to find more interesting pathways, musicians added chords in between. So put something between the 4 and the 1. So this 4 minor is one of them. And another common one is 4 to sharp 4 diminished. So think, for example, a gospel version of Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That's the sharp 4 diminished. So So this is something that's very common in a lot of blues and gospel music. When, especially something you do, it's a harmonization that you tend to favor when you want the song to have a bluesy flavor. Another simple pathway from A flat to E flat, 4-1, would be just 4-5. So A flat to B flat 7, E flat. And actually this is Oscar Peterson's harmonization of this tune. Basically, these different pathways serve the same harmonic function, the same harmonic direction. It's basically getting from 4 back to 1. And how do you choose one over the other? Well, first you have to assess the context. If we are accompanying the melody, then we have to see which chords fit the melody. So in this case, A flat to B flat 7 works well. But A diminished seventh would not work. Sorry, A flat major to A diminished, which is the sharp 4 diminished. It doesn't work on account of the melody. However, for improvisation, any of these options are totally fine regardless of what the rhythm section does, as long as you do it intelligently. And I've actually seen Birelli-Legren do this in one version. I forget which one. He does A flat to A diminished, E flat. This is the important concept of harmonic direction. Now, let's go back to the 4 to 4 minor. In the iReal Pro, you have D flat 7 instead of 4 minor. So instead of A flat minor, you have D flat 7. This is what is called flat 7 dominant. And some people also call it the backdoor 2-5 because of the way it resolves. Basically, backdoor 2-5, if we added the 2, would be A flat minor to D flat 7 to E flat. So it resolves from behind. And if we wanted to add the A flat minor, the 2 chord, then we have to be aware of the context. Are we playing over the melody? If so, then we have to be careful not to assume that it's going to be A flat minor 7, because like the A diminished 7th sound, the sharp 4 diminished, it doesn't fit the melody. It has to be A flat minor triad, or if you really have to decorate it somehow, A flat minor 6 or even A flat minor major 7, which is the note that the melody insists on. Now let's change D flat 7 to D flat 9. So we have the notes D flat, F, C flat, E flat. And if we change the note D flat to A flat, we have A flat minor. And that's basically where the D flat 9 comes from. Again, it's the exact same chord, it's just that the bass note is slightly different. And it offers a different bass line possibility. So instead of a bass line that went from A flat major to A flat minor to E flat, now you have a bass line that can go A flat to D flat, E flat. It's all voice leading. Essentially, the backdoor 2-5 and the 4 minor are historically the same chord. Earlier, I mentioned how I tried to date the compositions to explore the different songwriting and arranging trends of the time. And this flat 7 sound is actually something that came later. It was originally 4 minor. And my guess would be that at some point, musicians got bored and realized that 4 minor and flat 7/7 had so many common tones that they were essentially the same chord. And that the difference is that it added just a little bit more spice and a different bass line possibility. Because remember what I said earlier, that how prevalent this 4 to 4 minor sound was in the early days of jazz or pop, or American pop music. Imagine hearing it all the time for at least like 20 years. At one point, maybe a musician will try to find something new, and perhaps this is that new thing. This chord progression also happens in Cherokee. But now if you look at Cherokee, if you look at the iReal Pro, it says B flat, to F minor 7, to B flat 7, to E flat, to A flat 7. It's that backdoor 2-5 again. Back to B flat. But originally Cherokee was just B flat, to B flat 7, to E flat minor, to B flat. If you check out one of Charlie Parker's early recordings of Cherokee, you hear the rhythm section playing these simple chords, while Charlie Parker himself is implying all these passing chords because he understood voice leading. So even though the rhythm section was doing something basic, he, because of his deeper understanding of these pathways, was implying various substitutions. Let's move on with the song. So we've reached E flat from A flat, and we want to reach F7. And again, this F7 is an extremely popular chord in the major key. So in the key of E flat, it is what we call the 2 dominant sound, the 2-7. Found in so many songs, again, of the old days, of early American pop music, or even jazz. You have Take the A Train. It happens earlier. I sang I Can't Believe That You're in Love with Me. There it is, that's that 2 dominant. It happens in the B section of Honeysuckle Rose. It happens in songs like It Had to Be You, I Can't Get Anything But Love, All of Me. So many songs in the early days of jazz or American pop music featured this 2 dominant sound. So basically we have E flat wanting to go to F7. But for more interesting voice leading, we can connect both chords with an E minor in between. C minor, sorry. So let's look at C minor 7. Check it out. E flat, C minor 7, F7. So many common tones, right? From C minor, E flat to C minor, I just changed the bass. And then to F7, if I played F9, I changed the bass, but I also changed this one note. Voice leading, voice leading, voice leading. From F7, it leads us to the dominant chord, B flat 7. Again, many jazz musicians though will like to put a 2 chord behind the B flat 7. So I'll go from F7 to F minor 7, or F minor, to B flat 7 to get that 2-5 motion going. In the original recording from the movie, it goes from 2 dominant directly to the 5 dominant. There's no 2 in between. The second half of the song starts out the same way, and then towards the end is where we have what most students would consider the most confusing part. And with good reason. There are quite a number of ways to harmonize this ending part. First, let's simplify things. We have A flat to A flat minor to E flat, just like in the first part. And from here, it's basically an open canvas that wants to resolve to E flat. You want to get from E flat and find your way back to E flat again. So just somewhere before that resolution, you want a kind of a chord that indicates movement back to E flat. So the most obvious choice would be a B flat 7. So essentially you have E flat going to B flat 7, going to E flat, 1, 5, 1. With a melody in mind, let's consider various possibilities. And let's just look at what the iReal Pro shows. Well, the version that I have anyway. It shows us E flat going to A half diminish to D7. And some charts also show, I've seen other charts that show A minor 7 to D7. So the melody is actually on the note D. So if you were to harmonize it, if you want to like play chord melodies, then you want some kind of voicing that allows you to play the note D. So it would be A minor 7 with an 11 to D7. If you do it up here, you can do this nice A minor 7 chord. So it's an A minor 11 and it has the natural ninth to D7. You have this voicelet. Okay? At any rate, it looks like some kind of 2-5, doesn't it? As we've seen now, when we have a 2-5, the 2 in many situations is optional. And in many instances, especially with older styles of jazz or early American pop music, the 2 was not there at all. So if we simplify things further, we basically have E flat going to D7. And this D7 is a very interesting chord. That's why. This, I guess we can call this the 7 dominant chord. And it's a bit of an ambiguous chord on purpose. Ambiguous because it can go in so many different directions and it can be interpreted in different ways. If you want the full history of this chord, you gotta check out my harmony course. It really is that good. Historically, it can be argued that it comes from classical music, and it wouldn't be false. It is what classical theorists call common tone diminished chord. And a composer that really liked this was Chopin. It was a very, very popular chord progression in the Romantic era. So the 19th century, early 19th century, the first half of the 19th century. And it has a bit of a nostalgic sound to it. So maybe most of you probably have heard this. Da dee, da dee, da da, da dee, da 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 dee, da dee, dee, la, dee, da da. And here it comes, da. That's the common tone diminished chord. What was the chords that I played? A flat, da dee, 4 minor to the 1, da dee, 6 dominant, da 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 dee, da 2, 5, and then voice leading 5 becomes G7. It's all voice leading G7, so B flat 7 to G7 to C minor. So that's the 6, and then after the common tone diminished chord. like a B flat sus kind of thing, to B flat 7 to E flat. So in the key of E flat, the common tone diminished chord is E flat diminished. And for those of you who know a little bit about diminished chords can have 4 possible names. It can be called E flat diminished, G flat or F sharp diminished, A diminished, or C diminished. They're the same chord. So how is this D7 a common tone diminished chord when it's a dominant chord? Well, I guess sometime in the 20th century, instead of having E flat to E flat diminished, they decided to change the bass, the E flat bass, to a D natural. And what happens? Only one note changes. If you keep the E flat diminished chord and you just change the E flat, bring it down a half step, you have D7. So essentially you still have the common tone diminished sound, but you have this bass line. Sounds like old music, right? A lot of old songs have this. Rosetta. So Rosetta, F, E7, F to D7. So as I mentioned, this common tone diminished sound, or rather this 7 dominant, it has a number of different functions and can go in different directions. And you'll have to get the course on harmony to get the full explanation. But in this case, it serves to give a bit more spice to the static 1 chord. So otherwise you have like E flat major 7. And basically it goes from E flat to D7 back to E flat. So it's just to give a little bit of movement within the static E chord. And this is the function in the context of this song. And so this function, you can find it in other songs as well. There's a song called I'll See You in My Dreams. If I'm not mistaken, the way it was originally composed, you had basically 4 in the key of F. Da, 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 4 minor to the 1. Da, da, da. You had like 4 bars of 1. But some musicians got bored and decided to add that 7 dominant sound. So da 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 4 minor to the 1 to the 7. There it is. So basically, if I just do it in time. There we go. There's a song that I like to use it in as well, Sweet Sue, an old one. Every star above knows the one I love, Sweet Sue, just you. There we go. It's a move that a lot of musicians did in the old days when they had the 1 chord for a long time. So it's basically an optional chord that can be added on a whim. And it's something that you would include in an actual official harmonization of a song if it fits the melody. So that was the case in I'll See You in My Dreams. And in the case of Sweet Sue, I just modified 1 note a little bit to make it bluesy. Just you. So coming back to the iReal Pro version of There Will Never Be Another You, so you have E flat to A minor 7 flat 5. So this A minor is that extra chord substitution, the 2 chord, to give a more elaborate bass line motion. So E flat. As I mentioned, theoretically it should be A minor 7 flat 5, but some people also play A minor 7. And if the melody allows it, then you can do it. In this case, it's on the no D, so actually both situations work. But basically, A minor 7 on account of the E natural, keep in mind that we're in the key of E flat, it can sound a little bit dissonant. But this is still a move that jazz musicians started to explore to get away from the typical diatonic sounds that they had been immersed in for so many generations, so many years. So as far as jazz music is concerned, you hear this special dissonant chord progression in songs like Groovin' High. Da-dum, da-dum. Here. Other songs that have been harmonized this way by jazz musicians, I'll Remember You. Basically, you find this progression in a fair number of jazz standards out there. It also happens in Alone Together. At one point it goes from D7 to G minor, B minor 7, E7, there it is, to G minor to C7 to F. So it's actually, in relation to the key of F, this B minor to E7 is that common tone diminished sound. There's a harmonization of Like Someone in Love, where in the end of the A section, instead of 2, 5, 1, so E flat. It goes so it's a progression that happens, and hopefully now you understand where it comes from. And if you want more details, check out my harmony course. Because this common tone diminished sound, as I said, is very ambiguous on purpose. It allows a few different possibilities, and actually we're gonna explore one of the possibilities in just a bit in this song. There Will Never Be Another You I'm talking about. Okay, now the last 4 bars, the iReal Pro shows E flat, A flat 7, to G minor, to C7, to F minor 7, B flat 7, resolving to E flat. Different charts will basically show different variations. In some instances, the G minor 7 becomes G7 altered. Okay? So why would it be altered? It's just on account of the melody. Da, 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 da. However, this song was written in 1942, and in those days the altered sound was still not really the trend. Definitely not the trend yet. And I'll show you the original chord progression a little bit later. Essentially though, as I mentioned earlier, the skeletal version of the last 4 bars is basically E flat, B flat 7, going to E flat. Or if you want to give a little bit more intricate bass motion, E flat to F minor to B flat 7. Da, 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 da. Because all that melody, the whole melody there at the end is diatonic in the key of E flat. So basically 1 to 5 to 1, or if you want 1 to 2, 5, 1. This is a chord progression that is found in so many songs in early American pop music, early jazz songs. It happens in Chic of Araby. Da dee, da dee, da da dee. Da 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 da. Okay, so that had 2 instances of 1 going to 5. It happens, I Can't Give Anything But Love. I can't give you anything but love. There it is. So I did this kind of fancy passing chord thing, but really, I can't give you anything but love. 1 to 5, or if you want 2, I can't give you anything but love. There's a 2 and 5. Among the contemporary standards, you have a song like Tangerine. Tangerine. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. So here, 2, 5 to 1. Then again, 2, 5, 2, 5, 1. It happens in Perdido. Right? Perdido. Happens in Bye Bye Blackbird. In the earlier days, we were likely to encounter the naked progression. Naked as in like the most simplified version. And which is why I always try to date the compositions. Later on, the more intricate versions that we encounter in one form or another may be written to the song itself, such as St. Thomas, Have You Met Miss Jones? And when it comes to harmonizing an actual song, which variation to use always depends on the melody. So, for example, Have You Met Miss Jones? It's basically F, the first 4 bars, F to C7 to F. It's the same progression, but it's purposely dressed up this time. Okay? St. Thomas. That one's even more intricate. So when it comes to harmonizing an actual song, which variation to use always depends on the melody. So as I mentioned earlier, in the case of There Will Never Be Another You, the last 4 bars, we said the basic skeletal version is just 1-5-1. And in this case, despite all the crazy chord movements, the melody itself is diatonic to the key of E flat, which is why E flat just works for those first few bars. Da, 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 da. Already, this skeletal version shows us the basic harmonic direction for improvisation. So essentially, if you want to improvise, something that a lot of people do, they just stay kind of in E flat and just do a kind of like quick 2-5 at the end. That's certainly possible for improvisation, regardless of what the rhythm section is doing. But most people, when they accompany, they're not going to make it that simple. So what we're going to do now, we're going to try to make it just a little bit more intricate. And let's modify the iReal Pro changes a little bit. So instead of E flat to A flat 7, we're going to do E flat to A flat, to C minor, to C7, F minor, B flat 7. So if we did this, with the exception of the C7 chord, the entire chord progression is still diatonic to the key of E flat. So basically you have E flat going to the 4, going to the 3, 6 dominant, then 2-5-1. So remember, each individual chord is not important. And this is one of the core concepts of harmonic direction. In this seemingly complicated chord progression, the only thing matters is that we're going from 1, stability, to some kind of tension, that 2-5, back to 1. So even though I don't really think in terms of scale, if I were to use an E flat major scale throughout, I would phrase things in such a way to show this movement, this resolution at the end. And that's what the melody does. Da 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 dee da. And that's what I would do if I wanted to outline the harmonic direction. And it's also possible not to outline the harmonic direction. It's possible to do other things, but that goes beyond the scope of this mini lesson. So let's look at that chord progression. Again, E flat to A flat. Let's say A flat major 7 because it makes it more jazzy. So in the iReal Pro, why does it have A flat 7? Hopefully you've been following what I've been talking about until now, and you probably guessed it right. Voice leading. If you have E flat to A flat 7, you have this voice leading. Da, 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 da. It's always a good idea to take different basic chord tones of each chord and see all the voice leading possibilities. And that's often how you discover new harmonizations. And as I've said many times already, a lot of these chord progressions are chosen for these kinds of voice leading techniques. Now, instead of A flat, some people play D7. And that's that ambiguous common tone diminished chord that we looked at earlier. So E flat to D7 is no big deal. It's what we saw earlier. But now it resolves to G minor. So basically, it's what I mentioned earlier. This is one of the possible resolution points of the ambiguous chord. The previous resolution point was E flat, D7 back to E flat, but now D7 goes to G minor. Of course, there are also charts where I've seen that have written E flat, D7 back to E flat, and then after to C7. So da 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 da. All possible. So this E flat, D7, E flat is the original motion that we saw earlier. And another clever thing that I've seen in certain charts is instead of E flat, the first chord, the last 4 bars, the first chord is E flat, right? But instead of E flat, let's have G minor. Da, 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 da. The G minor is the 3, the diatonic 3 minor of E flat, the 1 chord. It works because it shares many common tones with the 1. Furthermore, another clever thing is I've seen just before the G minor chord, we had that A minor 7, D7 thing, right? And there again, that's one of the other possible resolution points. Instead of going back to E flat, now we go to G minor. So effectively, we have now a 2-5 to G minor. So this is the 5 bars before the end. So this G minor chord on the first of the last 4 bars is rather clever. The only thing that's a little bit weird, not so much, is like the note E. E flat. It's not necessarily a big deal, it's just last one beat, it's on the second beat. Da, 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 da. There we go. So talking about G minor, the 3 as a substitute for the 1 chord, this is something that players did a lot in later eras. Originally, G minor should be E flat over G, first inversion of the 1 chord. Da, 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 da. And everything is always done in the context of voice leading. So the original version of Body and Soul, if you play that, well, first here's the way most people play it, according to the iReal Pro. So already in this original version, not original, but iReal Pro version of Body and Soul, you have that same chord progression, E flat, D flat to G flat 7 to the 3 minor. It's the same when we went to There Will Never Be Another You, this E flat, A flat 7 to G minor. It's that exact same thing. But now check out the original version of Body and Soul. Well, original, it's hard to say because if you look at early versions of the song, it was harmonized in so many different ways. But here's, for example, Coleman Hawkins, if I remember exactly how it went. D flat over F, E diminished, E flat, there we go. So it's this, D flat over F to E diminished, E flat minor. So basically we saw a bunch of tiny variations on this ending, but the essential thing is what I said, the principle of harmonic direction. It's just 1, 5, 1. Everything that came before is basically just decoration. And how you decorate depends on so many factors, melody being one of them. And then after, it's just a matter of taste, really. So earlier, when I played Tangerine, I had shown this progression like this, right? Tangerine. Da, 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 da. So 2, 5, 2, 1, back to 2, 5, 2, 5. But a lot of players nowadays, they would do something more like this. Da, 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 da. Well, here the melody is doing nothing in that space, so it gives us so many options. So what I did F, B flat 7, A minor 7 flat 5, D7. It's the same chord progression that one of the variations that we saw in There Will Never Be Another You. So it's very good to recognize all this because it happens in so many songs. And a lot of even nowadays professional musicians or even jazz teachers are not aware of this. So check out my harmony course. Now it's time to look at the original recording that was made for the movie. So it was not in a jazz style. It's kind of like a cabaret. There's a singer singing to soldiers. Okay, this is what it does. Again, we're going to play this in the key of E flat. So from the part where it goes 4 to 4 minor. What did I do? So 4 to the 4 minor to the E flat. Okay, 1, then it goes to G7 or G major, to C minor, to F7, F13. So this is a 2 dominant chord. It's again a bit of a result of a manipulation of the 1 common tone diminished sound. Remember earlier when I said E flat diminished, and we basically found D7 by changing the bass note. And remember when I said that when you have a diminished chord, you have essentially 4 different names. So if I went from E flat to G flat diminished, and I replaced the G flat with a F, we have this 2 dominant sound. So it's a result of this manipulation. So this kind of chord progression, you can encounter it also in a number of songs. It happens in After You've Gone at the end in some versions where it goes someday when you were lonely, da 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 da, A7. And basically from E flat to F7, there's a little voice leading happening in between, all in the span of 1 beat, because actually it was recorded as a ballad. So da 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 da. So that's where this G7, it's all voicing. But check it out. If I play E flat with a B flat bass, G7, so you have So what does the ending do? If I'm not mistaken, if I remember, it does something like this. Da, da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, dee, da. What was it? E flat to D7. That's that common tone diminished thing I told you about. And then here, D flat, what do you want to call this? Well, it's actually G minor 7 flat 5 with a D flat bass, or if you want like a B flat minor with a D flat bass, C7. But all of it is voice leading though. Check out this voice leading. Then 2, 5, 1. And that Oscar Peterson recording that I talked about earlier has some interesting stuff as well. It does like da, dee, da, 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 da. So what did I do? I did 1, 4 minor to 1. Then that part where it has that F7 that we left from the original recording does F7, but then F sharp diminished, all voice leading to G, E flat over G, to A flat, back to E flat over G, and then F half diminished, then B flat 7, B flat. Check it out. So basically the whole point of this video is to talk to you about this whole thing, this harmonic direction concept that I keep talking about. It's the idea of function. And when it comes to improvisation, what matters is the way we phrase. We have to phrase in a way that shows us the resolution. So you always have to know where you're going. So when you check out recordings from a lot of different players, a lot of players don't necessarily outline every change. And even if they did, it might not always be the changes that the rhythm section is playing. So this is again, the whole concept of harmonic direction. Furthermore, even within the rhythm section, it's possible, like for example, the pianist might be playing one set of possible harmonic direction changes and the bass player is playing something else. This is something that happened a lot in the Miles Davis band from the 50s. Red Garland would have one set of changes and Paul Chambers would have another set of changes, and Miles Davis was thinking his own thing as well. All three of them were working together, but they all knew where they were going. And they were notorious for this. And you would even see sometimes if you check from chorus to chorus, the changes are changing. So that if you had to write a chart for a Miles Davis recording playing a standard, you'd have to make charts for every single chorus, for every single instrument. And therefore, a chart is something that you should use when you're first learning a song and you don't have the ears for it, but then you want basically to understand where things are going. And that's basically what all these musicians understood. They understood the essential skeletal structure of the song so that they could improvise their way from chorus to chorus. And this is, again, this Miles Davis group is a bit of an extreme example of this because there are other groups who are more by the book with more minimal variations from chorus to chorus. That's the point I want to make. Harmonic direction. When you study the jazz improvisations of the old swing and bebop masters, you see this happening in varying degrees, which is why I think it's always great to understand as much about basic harmony to then have the basic ability to choose between different pathways when it comes to harmonization or improvisation. And of course, in later years, musicians started experimenting with more intricate sounds, and that goes beyond the scope of this course here. So once more, when I'm improvising as a soloist, I may suggest any of the possibilities, the harmonic possibilities that I mentioned earlier, and that I might even go beyond that, because I only showed you the common stuff. And all this is happening regardless of what the rhythm section is doing. And all this is the result of many, many years of research, of careful research, careful listening, learning so many songs. So if this stuff interests you, then please check out my course. It really is that good. And it goes into even more detail, and I even show some more advanced techniques. Check it out.